Okay, well, it looks like we are right at 10:30, so we can go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. And this is the information session for the Thriving Next Gen Pathway Grant. Thanks for joining. I know we might have a few more folks trickling in. And obviously, we're recording this. We will post it. So if you need to come back and refer to anything, that will be made available. We'll have that posted up on the United Way website. Just a little bit of information that we wanted to share with everybody today before you start jumping in and working on applications. There's not a ton of stuff, but we did want to just make this available so everybody is on the same page going in. I think we had this scheduled for 45 minutes, but we will probably get through it pretty quickly. And we will have time at the end for folks to ask questions as well. So hopefully if there's anything that is still unclear as we go through this, we can get all that resolved, and then you can get started on applications. All right, so just to kind of kick things off and level set, and of course, I apologize in advance if there are technical problems. There probably will be. I'm not very good at Teams. Hold on one second here. There we go. Okay, so for those of you who have perhaps not worked a lot with United Way in the past, just want to give you a little bit of an overview. United Way's mission is really focused on one thing and one thing only, and that is upward mobility. Upward mobility is just a fancy way of saying poverty reduction. We care about the poor. United Way is about helping and serving poor people in our community. And upward mobility it's a larger concept. It is about helping both people who are struggling right here, right now, so working adults, and also thinking about longer term poverty in our community. So cycles of generational poverty are also our concern. And we know that poverty is complex. We know that there are many things that influence poverty and influence people's ability to break out of poverty and become upwardly mobile. And so we invest in several different things to help influence poverty reduction and upward mobility in our community. And these are our four major opportunities for investing in the community. These, we call them our pathways. So mental health and social stability and growth are the two kind of pathways, our outer pathways that are for families holistically. We have fund services that are for social stability and growth, case management, and wraparound supportive services for entire families. Mental health, we have counseling and supportive services, both for kids and also for adults. And then our kind of inner two pathways, empowering employment, that's really for adults, for working folks, making sure they have the resources they need to maintain and stay steady in employment. And then, of course, our kids, thinking about what kids need to be successful and thrive in. For the most part, what they need is building skills so that they are ready to be successful in school, successful in their future, so that one day they can move into meaningful employment and meaningful careers. So I know that is the grant we're all here to talk about. So Thriving Next Gen, the grant purpose. This is, as we've just said, upward mobility. We really want to think about it as a 2-gen approach. And there's a lot of research that indicates the best way to support kids and create communities where folks are more likely to be upwardly mobile, where they are more likely to have a better chance of breaking out of poverty, both in the near term for adults who have a better chance to move up in the short term, and for kids to break cycles of generational poverty. One of the common themes that they found across communities where that is more likely is that they have strong schools. Communities that have strong public schools, strong public education, are places where poverty is less of an issue, and certainly less of a generational issue. So that is something that United Way really wants to prioritize, is investing in our schools, investing in our school communities, and building strong school communities that can help support our kids. So how do we do that? Well, United Way does not claim to be education experts, so we figured the best thing that we need to do is listen to those who are. So we've spent a lot of time engaging with our education leaders. United Way staff meet with the leaders of our school districts, both here locally in Vanderburgh County. In our outer counties, we also serve Warwick and Spencer counties, and getting to understand their priorities, what they need in their schools, what they need in their communities. And we've also built what we call an expert task force. The expert task force is someone who works with us on an ongoing basis. It's a committee of volunteers. They are all educators, and we're really proud of this group. They have a very diverse experience. So we have educators who have experience in elementary education, high school education. We have educators who have special ed education, ESL, all different types of education backgrounds. And these are the folks who have been our kind of content experts in developing this grant. So they are the folks who helped write the actual questions that are on the applications. And they, even more important than that, they are the folks who wrote the rubric by which all applications will be scored. So they're the ones who really decide, well, what is a good answer? What's a bad answer? What exactly are we looking for from nonprofits who would be supporting our schools? Because that's really what this is all about, is nonprofits supporting our schools. So what do these experts tell us that they are most excited about, what they most want to see from supportive partners? School attainment, right? It's all about school attainment. We love school attainment. Traditionally, I know most of you guys are probably rolling your eyes right now. Most of the time when you hear people talk about education, you hear people talk about educational attainment. That's what you hear about. Who is on track for third grade reading? Who's on grade level for eighth grade math? Who's graduating on time? That's what we care about, right? Attainment, attainment, attainment. That's the name of the game. And I don't dispute that. Obviously, the experts agree that those things are really, really important. And we know educational attainment, it correlates with a lot of great future outcomes. If we want people to be upwardly mobile, if you have high educational attainment, it's more likely that you will break cycles of generational poverty. It's absolutely aligned with United Way's goal of upward mobility. So why isn't the purpose of our grant, educational attainment? Well, because we know, we've listened to our experts, and both the research and our local experts agree, school engagement needs to come first. School engagement is the building blocks that get you to attainment. Kids who are engaged in school, kids who care about school, are more likely to have better school attainment and better school outcomes. So let's talk about school engagement. School engagement is really the focus of this grant and the focus of what we want to fund and what all of our educational partners have said they want out of their nonprofit partners. So we kind of break that down into a couple different areas. And there'll be different opportunities for you to kind of highlight your work in these areas on the grant application. So we're speeding right along here. Research sort of defines school engagement in ABCs, and I try to avoid using some of this mumbo jumbo technical language, but affective, behavioral, and cognitive engagement. So how students feel, act, think about their education. So some examples of this: how the students feel about school, their sense of belonging. I know a lot of nonprofits will be measuring or surveying or trying to understand or gauge kids' sense of belonging in their school community. This would also include relationships at school. So if a student feels particularly connected to a mentor or a teacher or a counselor, an adult at school who they feel they have a strong positive relationship with, that can be a great source of affective engagement. This would also include positive peer relationships at school. So kids who feel like, hey, I like to go to school because I like the people there, I like the culture there, I like the community there. Strong affective engagement. And again, strong link to better educational attainment down the road. Next up, behavioral engagement. And I know many nonprofits will think, okay, here's our opportunity to shine, because these are the things that are a lot easier to observe and certainly easier to quantify and measure. Behavioral engagement is how kids act in relationship to their education. So some examples of this would be, are students attending school regularly? Are they completing their homework regularly? Are they coming to class prepared? Are they participating in classroom activities? Other things that you could kind of lump in with behavioral engagement would be things like focused attention and sort of the self-control that would be required for paying attention in class. So for those of you who work closely with EVSC, when we talk a lot about executive functioning and the ability to manage behavior in the classroom to dedicate focused attention to learning, all of that speaks to behavioral engagement. So for those of you who are working closely on executive functioning type of initiatives, this is a great place where you can highlight that work. And last but certainly not least, cognitive engagement. And cognitive engagement can kind of be defined in a few different prongs, few different dimensions. How the student thinks about education and about content that they're learning. So obviously this would talk about like future opinions. Do I think what I'm learning is relevant to my life? Do I think that graduating high school or getting a college degree is really going to be beneficial to me? Do I think it's something that's attainable for my life? So those sort of attitudes and beliefs about the importance of education would fall under the heading of cognitive engagement, but also the attitudes and the feelings about what they are learning in particular. So that sort of level of excitement and interest around the book that they're reading in their language arts class, or that really cool STEM activity that they got to do in an after-school program. So getting kids engaged and excited about learning is a big part of that cognitive engagement. So for programs that are perhaps a little bit more academic in nature or focused more on that academic side of thing, that's a great example of cognitive engagement. So as you can see, really all of the different, the vast majority of the different interventions that nonprofits and schools are putting into place, they're touching at least one, if not more, of these different types of engagement. So it's really about how you frame the work that you're doing, and we can have conversations about that. Obviously, if you have great data and great stories to tell about educational attainment, that's wonderful, and we would love to hear about that as well. That's very, very important. But we want to understand these foundational pieces that speak to a larger culture that you may hopefully be building within that school through the partnership that your nonprofit and your program has with the school or schools that you are serving. So that is, in a nutshell, the goal and the purpose of the Thriving Next Gen grant. Okay, so that's kind of a lot to digest. And again, we'll have time for questions here at the end. Moving forward, so diving in a little bit about the actual process of applying for this grant. If you've heard something that sounds like, oh, wow, yeah, that sounds like my program. Here we go. The actual process of this grant. So scope and priority. The scope are the just, absolutely you must check this box parameters in order to be eligible to apply. Obviously, United Way we can only fund 501c3s, so you do need to be a technical IRS definition nonprofit. You need to serve a majority low-income students. Our definition of low income is students who are eligible for free or reduced lunch, and that means households that are not more than 185% of the federal poverty line. So you do need to have some understanding of that and the kids that you're serving. If you are tracking that on a student by student basis, that is super helpful. If you know your students' your participants rate in particular, that's very, very helpful, because we will ask you specifically for that percentage. If you don't know, if that's not something that you track, then you need to find out at the very least the schools that you're serving, the rates that the average rate at the school that you're serving. And you may need to, make a case that, okay, the students participants in my program are representative of the larger student body of the school that I'm serving. So hopefully that will give us a good picture of the students you're serving. Just a little note here, service to low income students. As I said, United Way is about service to low income and poor people. That's kind of the whole point of us. So we really are very serious about making sure that our funds are dedicated for that purpose. So for nonprofit programs that serve a wider audience than that, I would highly recommend that you narrow your ask or narrow your focus in this grant application to be a little bit more specific to that population. So for instance, if you say, well, wow, Margaret, my program serves every single school in Evansville. Your request for this grant may want to zoom in and say, I'm going to request funds to support the services of my program at these 5 specific schools that I know have a higher percentage of low-income students. That would be a more appropriate request of the United Way, because the United Way is not going to fund your services to go to higher income students. That would not be an appropriate use of United Way funds. So if you have any questions about that, we can address those later, or happy to discuss those in a one-on-one conversation. Other scope requirements, this grant is supporting programs that are serving students in pre-K to 12. This is a little bit different. So in our last round, we were not including pre-K programs. We have expanded that a little bit. So if you have some pre-K learners, this would be inclusive of pre-K kids as well. It is that cutoff at 12th grade though. So if you have like college age programs, they would not be included in this. If there's other early learning programs before pre-K, they would not be included in this. It's pre-K to 12. It's kind of where we're drawing the line. Other scope requirement, you need to have a documented relationship with at least one public school partner. And by documented, you have to have like a letter of support from that public school partner that will need to be provided, just so you can show that they are supportive of the relationship. The principal is aware you're there in the school, or aware you're supporting the school, and supportive of the relationship. So that's it. Those are just the basics of, if you check all those boxes, you are welcome to apply. Minimum funding request is $50,000. And just to kind of speak to that, $50,000 that's a decent sized grant. Pathway grants are frequently a little bit larger than that. There is no maximum request amount. Obviously, we do have limited funds, but we do want you to ask for what you really need, but a realistic ask. Just to set your expectations, you will have to write a spending plan. So for whatever you're requesting, you're going to have to kind of line item out specifically how you intend to use it. So specifically how many staff people it would be supporting, or specifically how much supplies you would be purchasing with it, things of that nature. So don't just put in an enormous number and, hope we will just go with it. Ask for what you need, but what you reasonably need, what your program could reasonably absorb and reasonably spend in a 2-year timeline, because this is a 2-year grant. And for the organizations who think, wow, 50,000, ooh, that might be kind of big. If you're a small nonprofit, you're just getting started, you may not be ready for that level of funding. That's okay. United Way still wants to work with you. We still want to engage with you. So if you fall into that category, please reach out to us. I would love to introduce you to our Amplify program. That's another nonprofit or United Way program that's really dedicated towards working with smaller grassroots nonprofits. So if you kind of fall into that camp and you think this Pathway grant might be a little bit too big for you, that's okay. We can find another opportunity to engage with you. So little shout out there to the Amplify program. Moving over there, so scope is the bare minimum to apply. Priority is kind of what we would recommend. So obviously we would like to see applicants who have a strong evaluation plan and outcomes. Outcomes need to be directed to those educational engagement types of things that we just discussed. Multi-year engagement of students. This is not a make or break, but we do prefer to see programs that are engaging kids over time. There are certainly programs that are, shorter term in nature that can be absolutely life-changing and super impactful. But I think, for the most part, programs that take the time to build relationships and engage with kids over time are probably more likely to have a lasting impact. So there is some priority and preference given to that in the rubric, but again, not a total make or break. And also, there is some priority in our rubric built in for geographic equity across our service area. As I mentioned, we serve not just Evansville and Vanderbilt County, but we also serve work in Spencer County. So we're very, very hopeful that we will have opportunities to invest in some of our outer counties as well. And so we want to make sure that we have some priority for that. And yeah, that is basically what you need to know in terms of the scope and priority. And again, I know I'm moving through this pretty quickly. As we kind of jump in, just to kind of talk you through what the application will entail, you'll start off with some questions, sections on organizational health. So your organization's looking at the organization overall, your larger nonprofit. So the board governance, your larger organization's staffing, things of that nature, mission, vision, all of that. And then we do dive into questions and sections that are specific to the program that you're seeking funding for. So the program model, and this is really talking about the tactical details of the, what, where, when of how the program works and the, funding purpose. So if we give you some money, what exactly are you going to do with it? How will that influence the what, where, when? And then next section, who. We do ask for student demographics. And we'll dive in a little bit more than just, age, race, gender, demographics. We also want to understand who your priority students are. So for instance, if your program is specifically targeting a certain type of student, like, we are targeting students with a certain academic profile, or we're targeting, first generation college goers or things of that nature. We want to identify that. We want to know about that. And I want to understand your rationale for why are you serving those kids. So whether it's we want to serve students of color or we want to serve kids in a particular zip code, we just want to understand who is your priority student and why are you prioritizing them. Next up, the partnerships. Obviously, we want to understand your school partnerships, kind of the history there, how you're working together, how you're collaborating, other relevant partnerships that are supporting the work. And then next, we kind of dive into some of the evaluation stuff. You will be asked to write a theory of change statement, that like if, then, because, kind of justifying your rationale as to why your particular program is relevant to supporting educational engagement. You do not have to write one for every single aspect of engagement. You can keep your theory of change really focused on one, or you could make it touching on multiple areas of engagement. Whatever you think is best represents your program is okay. Next, you can dive into some more details on evaluation method and results. So this is really highlighting your previous track record of success. Hopefully you've been measuring and evaluating students' progress in your program. Hopefully you have a kind of robust methodology for collecting data around student progress and strong results to back that up. As a note here, I always like to call out pilot programs. So if anybody on this call is interested in starting something new, and we know there are folks out there who have innovative ideas, you may not have a lengthy track record yet if you're just trying to get something off the ground or seeking startup funding, and that may be okay. There are certainly instances in which we may be open to funding a pilot. If that is the case, then you need to come very, very well equipped with research on why you believe your pilot idea will be impactful. It needs to be really grounded in best practice and research, and hopefully some understanding of similar models that have been successful in other markets. So this isn't just, a wild idea that someone dreamt up. There's a reasonable expectation that this will be successful if we invest in it. So that would be my guidance to potential pilots. And let's see here. Then, of course, obviously the budget. So we'll need to understand current spending. And then, as I said, whatever request you're putting into United Way, you will have to line item out. You'll have the opportunity to provide a little bit of narrative explaining how you're going to use the money. And we'll ask a few questions on sustainability and then whatever goals that you have for the expansion of the program or the sustaining of the program that would be based on this investment. So that could be around, service numbers. That could be around a change to your historical outcome rates. Where we kind of frame the question sometimes like more, better, both. How are you expecting that this investment is going to make your program better? Are you going to reach more kids? Are you going to reach the same kids but in a new and more effective way? What good will come out of this grant investment? So you have the opportunity to kind of explain that and set some benchmark goals around that. Okay. And now I get to offer this up to everybody. If everything I've just explained kind of seems like a lot, first of all, it's really not. It really won't be that bad. But if you have questions, I am totally here to talk through them with you. I'm perfectly happy to set up office hours. This is my email contact information. I make this available to everybody. And so if you're thinking, wow, I've never written a theory of change before, or gosh, I have just a wealth of data about my program, but I'm not really sure which of it is relevant to school engagement, or gosh, I just don't understand what's being asked of me in this question, just come and schedule some office hours time with me. I'm happy to talk through ideas with you. I'm happy to answer questions. I will be reading all of these proposals. I will be scoring all of these proposals, but in full transparency, my score is not the one that counts. The expert task force members' scores are the ones that count. So I don't feel any, ethical dilemma about giving you as much advice as I possibly can. My goal is to make these proposals as strong as possible so that by the time they make it to the expert task force, they are ready to go and awesome. And then that's just, fewer questions that they have to ask or fewer things that they have to ding you on. So by all means, take advantage of office hours. And I'll just schedule them, and in the past, I've kind of blocked off certain days and made it like a prescriptive thing. But honestly, I can just schedule with folks as needed. Okay, and here is the timeline. So application opens today. As of today, you can get into the grant portal and start poking around. The deadline for the application is September 6th. So that is the deadline, 5 p.m. Central Time on Friday. I believe it's a Friday, September 6th. That's when we will cut it off. And just to kind of like explain the flow of how this works, first step will be the expert task force will do their first read through of all the proposals, their first scoring on the rubric, and they will make initial cuts. So, folks that are just not quite as strong contenders will probably be cut off at that point. For proposals that they say, wow, those are pretty good, we're interested in, moving them forward. Those proposals will have the opportunity to do a Q&A. So at around mid-October, you may be hearing back from the committee with questions, and you'll have, about a week or 10 days to respond to those questions in writing. If you do not get questions, don't freak out. That doesn't mean you're not a finalist. They may just not have any questions. They may just think, okay, your proposal is really clear, and we didn't particularly have any questions of you. And also, just because you are a finalist, you do get Q&A, that does not guarantee you funding. That just means you haven't been eliminated from the process yet. So that'll happen around mid-October. They will do a second round of review, incorporate new information. At that point, we will do our second committee review, which is the finance review. So you will be providing financial documentation, and our finance committee will be doing a review of some of that type of information just to make sure your organization is financially healthy and would have the capacity to take on a sizable grant. That will be happening mid-October to early November. At that point, in around mid-November, all of the final evaluation data will be passed over to the United Way Community Impact Cabinet, which is a subcommittee of the board, and they will develop the funding recommendation. And the final funding plan will be voted on at the United Way board meeting in November. Grantee announcement will be made late November, early December in a press conference. So everybody wants to email asking, when are we going to find out? When are we going to find out? You will know by late November, early December, whether or not you've gotten this grant. So hopefully that gives you some transparency into how all this works. And next, so this is our evaluation timeline. What are they evaluating? Okay, this is a little bit of an insight into United Way evaluation process. All United Way Pathway Grant evaluations are kind of two-dimensional in nature. So you will have two different committees reviewing your proposal. As I've mentioned, our expert task force committee is reviewing your proposal for quality and fit. So alignment with that purpose of supporting educational engagement. They have a very specific rubric. They're looking for certain criteria in terms of operational excellence and outcomes supporting those goals. And that is, represented on a half of our graph. The other half of our graph is program efficiency. So that is determined by our finance crew. They're evaluating that. For the most part, the program efficiency score is really largely driven, and they will do a larger analysis around organizational financial health. But for the program request, this is really driven by cost per head of your request. So again, if you're only going to serve 10 kids, don't ask for $5 million. Just a word of advice. But not just cost per head, but cost per prioritized head. So we have the opportunity to incorporate different weighting factors to prioritize different things we care about. So low income priorities, priorities around geography, priorities around different profiles of students who we want to make sure are served. And then there are other factors that we incorporate into that, such as the impact of the grant on your overhead rate, things of that nature. So it's the kind of combination of these things that give your overall assessment, your overall kind of finish compared to relative to your peers in this competition. This is a competitive process. So, we're very transparent about that. Obviously, you want to be high and right on this graph. To be very transparent, we are much more like United Way has a preference. We will fund things that are our priorities, funding things that are extremely high quality. Even if they were a little bit more expensive, we would prioritize funding things that are very high quality. If things are both high quality and strong bang for your buck, then we are all about funding that. So this is really what United Way is looking for. We want to be transparent about that. Hopefully you can send us some proposals that speak to that. And that is, there we go. Hopefully we can keep my presentation going. There we go. Last thing, I wanted to walk through with everybody. This grant timeline is like a little bit tricky. So we want to just call that out up front. This is a grant to support education stuff. So obviously it would make sense if we aligned with school years, but just because of the length of our grant evaluation process, it takes us several months to evaluate grant proposals. It's kind of hard for us to line those things up perfectly. So I want to just make sure everybody's understanding the actual timeline of this grant term. So as I said, you'll find out if you get the grant around like Christmas time, and you'll start getting paid out for the grant in the very beginning of the next calendar year. So beginning of 2025, you'll start getting the money from this grant. This grant is not intended to support the current school year. So the one that is starting like next week, this current 24-25 school year, this is not intended to fund this year. This money is intended to fund the next school year. So it's intended to be funding the 25-26 and the 26-27 school years. So really what that means is you'll start getting the money early, kind of in advance. And what that will allow you to do is if you needed to hire, if you needed to staff up, if you needed to work on your evaluation plan, all of that good stuff, you have several months to do that where, you know, you're getting money coming in the door, but you're not really on the hook for providing any services yet. We'll be checking in with you, but there's no like data reporting requirement within that first 6 months. And then the expectation is you're really on the hook for providing the service, running the program, collecting data on the program for all of the 25-26 school year. We'll get a nice, you know, full academic year report after that. And then providing services and doing a full academic year report on the 26-27 school year. Notice your last payment of the grant will come during the fall semester of the 26-27 school year. You are still on the hook for providing services throughout the rest of spring semester that school year and providing a full academic year report on 26-27. So I know that's a little bit wonky. It doesn't align perfectly. Sorry, that's just kind of the best we can do with the, you know, the turnaround time for a competitive grant process like this. So that's just how that works. Okay. We are moving right along. I think we're more or less keeping on time. Very quickly, I just want to make sure everybody gets the lowdown on how to access this grant. United Way uses a grant portal called EC Impact. If you've used it before, it's, you know, it can be a little tricky if you're not familiar with it, but once you use it once or twice, it's not too bad. First thing, you go to our website, unitedwayswi.org, scroll all the way to the bottom and find that little button, EC Impact, and then there's like a second screen, click here to enter. If you already have a login, you will be able to log in. If you're new, create it here. Just a little word of, if you have not applied for a pathway grant, if your only interaction with EC Impact has been COVID relief, because you will probably need to create a new account. Like all the COVID relief accounts were kind of purged after that was wrapped up and done. So if you have not applied to a pathway grant, then, or if you are not a United Way legacy partner, you'll probably need to create an account. So you can go through that process. Once you are in, you've created your account, you have a home page, click here for register for new grant opportunities. And then the only one that should be, this will be the only grant opportunity available. So pretty straightforward. Click through continue. There'll be a couple screens of like, you know, typing in your organizational information, things of that nature. And then that'll get you to this page. I always want to call this out because registering for the grant is a two-step process. If you don't do the second step, you can't move forward. So this is, you know, shows you've made it through step one. You've registered your organization. So you've got the organizational forms. You still have to do step two, which is add the program that you are seeking funding for. So if you've used EC Impact a lot of times before, you may already have your program in there. So look in the drop-down box, see if your program's already registered in there. If so, you can just select it. If not, you can say create new program and assign it to this application. That'll, you know, walk you through a few screens of entering the basic information about your program. Also, you're going to have a little screener pop up. This is just the eligibility stuff that I mentioned earlier. Yes, we're a 501c3. Yes, we're serving majority low-income people. Yes, it's Vandenberg War Spencer. Yes, we abide by anti-discrimination. We are partnering with public schools and pre-K to 12. If you can say yes to everything, there's no reason why your program would be rejected in the assigning it to the application process. If for any reason you get hung up on any of these steps and either your organization or your program say, oh, denied, you're rejected from registering for this grant opportunity, just check with me. Hopefully it's just a technical thing and we can get it sorted out. But let's see, I think that should be basically it. Yeah, once you've got everything completely registered, you've done both steps, both organization and program are registered, then this is what it'll look like. You've got, like I said here, you've got all of the organizational forms. This is where you will upload like your financial documents that we mentioned. These are all the program forms that we talked through, and your opportunity to upload your school support letters. And then, oh, one other thing. Over on this sidebar, you'll find a little box called Resource Center. Click on there. I have written grants before, you guys. I know when you're writing a grant, what is the first thing you do? You go in the grant portal and you copy paste all of the questions into a Word document so you can draft your proposal in a Word document, because nobody drafts in the actual portal. We already did that. So you can just download what the application looks like in a Word doc, and it's already formatted and nice. So you can write your thing in a Word doc and not have to actually do it in EC Impact, because EC Impact has little boxes and stuff like that, and it's hard to write in it. Also, your federal poverty guideline tables, as I mentioned, 185% is free and reduced lunch. But then we will also ask you about moderate income and economically stable households. So you need to have a ballpark understanding of that and the kids you serve and the families you serve. So if you're not familiar with those standards, they're outlined here. So that's just a good little reference for you guys to have. And we have that ready for you in the Resource Center, which is on the sidebar of EC Impact. And that is absolutely everything. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. We're right on time. Let me see if I can stop sharing my screen. And turn my camera on. I think we're right on time. All right, if there are any questions, let's see, I'm looking at the chat. Okay, we got a question in the chat. It says, we don't track free and reduced lunch, but do track percent of 21st century scholars we serve. How do we equate our info and what you need? So if you don't particularly track that, I would really recommend speaking to your school partner. So your school would probably have an idea of the rate at their school. And you'd need to have an understanding of, is my student population representative of the school as a whole? So hopefully that will be easy for you to get from the school. They should be able to know. If there are other questions, you can pop them in the chat. I'll give it just another minute or two here. Okay, it says, do public charters qualify under public school partner criteria? Yes, charter schools are considered public schools. That would be fine. Obviously, we'd want to understand the choice of school partner and make sure that aligns with United Way's mission. So if this was a charter school, for instance, that was like a specialty charter school for the arts and was less than 10% kids free on reduced lunch, I would question the alignment with United Way funding. If this is a charter school and it is serving a high percentage of low-income families, or that you are specifically targeting low-income families within that charter school, then I would say, yeah, that makes sense. How many dollars do you have to allocate? That's a great question, and not one I'm going to answer. We have a nice chunk of change. I can't say specifically how much money I have to spend on this grant. I anticipate that we will be able to make several awards, but it's going to depend on the applicants that we receive, the applications we receive, and what United Way board has the appetite to invest in. Next question, as a pre-K program, are Head Start programs eligible to apply? So if you are like a Head Start that is if you are like through a 501c3, then yes, if you were through a 501c3, then you are eligible to apply. If you have a pre-K Yeah, and you would, I mean, it would need to be focused on your pre-K program. Let's see, other questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, we're right at time. Well, as I mentioned, oh, there's one more question. Dang, thought we were just about done. Is the intention to fund full proposals? Will partial funding be an option? That's a great question. So one of the reasons that we ask for line item budgets is because we do consider partial. It is always our preference to fund in full when and where we are able, but by asking for a line item budget, we have like the ability to sometimes do smart partial funding. And sometimes we have gone back and asked grantees, like, you said you could deliver this much for X amount of money. How much could you do with a little less? So yes, it's something we're open to. It's certainly something we're open to. It is United Way's board's preference to fund in full when that is an option, but partial funding isn't off the table, I would say. All right. Well, this recording is going to be posted up on our website so you can go back and reference it. We'll also kind of email out that recording link and we'll make sure everybody has my email. Again, for those of you I don't know, my name is Margaret. I am the Director of Community Impact here. And so if you have any questions about this grant product, just email me. I'm happy to chat. We can hop on a Zoom. We can hop on the phone. At any point, I want to answer your questions and I want to be transparent about this as much as we can be. So I wish you all the best luck. We're excited to make some investments in the community. All right. Thanks, everybody.